Let's move on to Hillary. I was honestly kind of surprised by this, although I guess every once in a while, a broken clock is right twice a day and all of that. Hillary Clinton weighing on and says, actually, Joe Biden's age, it is a legitimate issue. Here's what she had to say.
Or should he embrace his, 8 decades on Earth and the great wisdom he's gained through all of this?
I mean, do you have... All of the above. All of the above. I mean, I talk to people in the White House all the time, and, they know it's an issue. But as I like to say, look, it's a legitimate issue. It's a legitimate issue for Trump, who's only 3 years younger, right? So it's an issue. Once you say that, then you have to also talk about what's at stake in the election. And I'm for Joe Biden for re-election on the merits.
It's a legitimate issue. On the merits, I'm for Joe Biden.
Was ageism.
Of course, she tries to deflect, onto Trump. Like, what are we doing? How many attacks did she make against Trump, and how many implications, the same thing she fell for, all of these like Trump health conspiracy theories. And we have a glaring actual conspiracy theory here, and not even a conspiracy theory, a glaring fact, like right in front of all of our faces. But like I said before in our previous block, this is the strategy. They are going to circle the wagons. They are running this man until the end, unless he literally dies. And I honestly don't know how they can morally come to terms with that. I was talking previously, Krystal, about the FDR fourth term. The people around him knew he was going to die. They knew he was going to die. And in many ways, they actually were very similar in their arrogance with the way they handled Truman, where they selected Truman. Truman only got to meet FDR 3 times before he assumed office, 83 days into the presidency. They never told him about the Manhattan Project. We had an entire war in Europe going on, Hitler's, suicide and all this other stuff. He was not prepared for it at all. The people around him, Harry Hopkins and other aides, they were running the country. They literally were running the country. Nobody, maybe if you read the New York Times at that time, you might have known Harry Hopkins' name. You don't know, the Secret Service agent who's running the guy around, or the people who are really running the country. We basically had a actual military coup for 83 days in this country, and nobody knew about it. I mean, I think that's what we're signing up for, something like this, and no one is being honest to us about it, except they're asking for 4 years. And then with Kamala too, we all better get real comfortable with the idea of Kamala as president if you're going to pull that lever for Biden. You got to really think about that, because people didn't think about that at the time in 1944. Most of the people, many of the troops who were serving in World War II, they were like, who the hell is Harry Truman? FDR had been president for 12 years. They barely even remembered, Hoover at that time. That's the level of insanity that we haven't lived, through 76 years or something like that. That they're trying to foist on us.
The thing with the Hillary comments that's interesting to me is I believe that interview was recorded before the special counsel report came out, because it appears to be part of that same interview that we covered last week, where she made her comments about Tucker and the, useful puppy dog or whatever the hell she said about that situation. And so I wonder if after the report, with the circling of the wagons, if she would have said the same thing.
Maybe.
Because I do think it's important, because, part of why those comments from Hillary got as much traction as they did is because there was a sense of like, oh, maybe the power brokers behind the scenes in the Democratic Party are trying to make a move to take out Biden, whatever. I mean, first of all, you need to know that the Democratic Party is just not that organized. Like, I don't think that there is some cabal behind the scenes that is really capable of just pushing him out and inserting in their favored candidate, whether that's Kamala or Gavin or Pete or whoever that would be. So I actually think before the report came out, it was probably more acceptable to just vaguely acknowledge, like, yeah, age is a legitimate issue, but, obviously on the merits, I'm for Joe Biden, et cetera, et cetera. Now there is a heightened sensitivity where I think it will be more radioactive within these sort of like mainstream Democratic establishment in their media organs to suggest such a thing. That's kind of my read into that. But the other thing that I'll say about this is, I mean, Hillary's younger than Biden, but she's obviously older as well.
She's old too.
The thing that always blows my mind is Bill Clinton, who obviously was president in the 90s, is younger than Joe Biden, which blows my mind. But, counter to the point of ageism, if you talk to older folks, like, they're aware of their own aging. They're aware of their own limitations. They're aware of the fact that it would be, incredibly onerous and difficult and, potentially beyond their capabilities to be president at this later stage in their life. And you also look at it like, why would you want to do that? You could be on a beach enjoying your family and living out your golden years and with, some sort of a legacy that, I personally wouldn't be proud of, but you probably would be proud of. Instead, you're Dianne Feinstein. This is your life. This is it. You only have one of them. And then, you couple that with the incredible damage if you really believe, as I do, that Trump is an existential threat to the country and that I don't want him to see him back in the White House and all of those things, think of the incredible risk that you're taking with the country. Just the level of arrogance. And it is astonishing. The level of risk they're willing to take with their party, the country, the world is truly something to behold. I can't wrap my head around it.
Yeah, to bolster your point, I remember, I won't give away his name, but a very, very famous, a world famous person. And I had dinner with him in like 2019. He's 78 years old. He was at the time, which is exactly how old Biden was whenever he took the oath of office. And he looked at me and he was like, look, I'm 78 years old. The idea that I could be president is batshit crazy. And this man today is much more put together than Joe Biden was. And he had the wherewithal to know that about himself. And he's like, I've accomplished a lot. People know my name. I've done a lot of good things. I'm just going to retire and I'm going to have, I have good times, my golden years with my wife and my grandchildren. That's what most people in this position would do. Biden, in many respects too, it's not like this is a call of service thing because it's about narcissists. He's been running for president since 1988. Like he's desperate to do this. And finally, the stars aligned for him to get him there. There's a huge portion of this too, where I don't know if you noticed, whenever that reporter was said to him, it's the American people feel as if you're too old to be president. He was like, that is your judgment. That is not the judgment of the press. I'm not sure what he meant exactly by that, but I think what he meant is that is not the judgment of the people. But that's not true. That is the overwhelming judgment of the people. But again, you see characteristics that are typical of the elderly: ornery, old, agitated, not wanting to grapple with reality, very difficult, egomaniac, very sensitive about having authority challenged, feeling as if losing a grasp on things around you, not secure. And these were all characteristics that he already had before he was old.
Yeah.
Everything just, what is the whole thing about being old? It just exacerbates who you were. You become even more so what you already are. Nothing wrong with that. It probably happens to everybody, but we see it all on display. You can see it.
Yeah. I mean, your patience just runs thin.
Right.
Your ability to control or temper or whatever. This is, again, not a judgment. I mean, it's, when I'm 80, I'm not going to have a use for, these bullshit either. I'm going to tell you what I think too. But, it shows. It really shows. Branko Marcetic pointed out, and I thought this was a good point, that this really puts into context the David Ignatius column in particular, but there were a few others at that time, maybe about a year ago, that was sort of gently encouraging Joe Biden to step aside. And one of the other layers of cope that we've seen is this if he was really that infirm and that addled, there are a million reporters in this town who would love to report it, and so we know all about it. And I think that that's really silly because look at how long they hid Dianne Feinstein's condition. The reporters in this town know that if they want any prayer of access to not just Biden, but anyone in this White House, anyone in this administration, they've got to toe the line. And that is one line that it would be very difficult for them to cross and maintain any sort of access, et cetera. They know that. But also, it's not like there weren't some signs and inklings in the press, like that David Ignatius column, indicating that, there's some issues here and preserve your legacy, step aside, that gentle suggestion. Obviously, it wasn't taken, and we are where we are. And I agree with you, Saagar. Anyone who is deluding themselves to think there's some sort of backroom conspiracy going on to replace Joe Biden and push him out, and then they finally realize that this isn't going to go well for them, I would not get your hopes up because I think this is what it is. They've circled the wagons. They've decided this is their guy, come what may. They don't really care about the consequences. And I guess we're the ones who all have to live with it.
God help us.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.